That I might see that is a new version of Fade Into You from Mazzy Star here on 120 Minutes. I'm Louis Largent, this is Billy Joe, that is Mike, that is Trey Cool from Green Day. What was it that got you guys into music? What bands were you listening to? Was it the first, like the Buzzcocks, Clash, Sex Pistols wave of punk, or was it the X?
No,
it wasn't even that?
No, it was just more of the community that we're surrounded with, just of the bands and stuff around.
Wanting to get out of a hick town.
Yeah, and we didn't have any kind of music in like Rodeo, California. You know?
No, for a long time I couldn't even afford records, so we would pretty much, get a hold of punk demo tapes for 50 cents at shows and stuff, and good music starts at a certain level, and we just happened to find it at that level.
I noticed
You can make an argument for a lot of genres having a message behind them. The anti-war delivery of peace music from the 60s, the brutal telling of reality of American low-class city life and rap, and even going back as far as the great economic boom of jazz music in the 1920s. To me, however, no message stands out more than the anti-authority power chord punch conveyed in the genre of punk rock. The Offspring, Sum 41, Weezer, and Blink-182 all headlined the 90s era of media polarization, conspiracy, and youth rebellion. But there was one group specifically that would stand out from the others. One group that would influence the likes of Fall Out Boy, Kendrick Lamar, and even Billie Eilish. Featuring the same three members since its birth, rising to fame from Berkeley, California, and pushing out the same message of that 90s era over the last 30 years, today I will be talking about the one and only Green Day. So, I know what you're thinking. Hey Chris, that's great and all. I'm pretty sure my parents listened to them once or twice, but punk rock really isn't my thing. That's a valid point, and it's an understatement to say that the generation before us were what made punk rock even a thing. However, today I'm going to prove to you that Green Day is not just a simple punk rock band that had a glimmer of fame. This band influenced artists that I can guarantee you've heard of, and if it weren't for them, who knows if those artists would have made music in the first place. I'm going to discuss 3 albums that you or may not have heard of. But these albums transcended what we believe modern music to be, and Green Day has been behind every single one of them. So let's go back a bit. If you could break down the last half decade or so in musical movements, here's what you would have. Roughly speaking, if we tried to name all of them, we'd be here a very long time. First off, old school rock. This is your Beatles and Elvis generation right here. Next we have disco. This was the aftermath of Vietnam. Take it or leave it. The MTV era of the 80s. This is your once in a lifetime greats like Madonna, Prince, and Michael Jackson, of course. Then you have the rise of the grunge era. This is where Nirvana and Pearl Jam take center stage. And then something happened that would change the music world forever.
Word of an untimely death. Kurt Cobain was the lead singer of the group Nirvana. Their albums were bestsellers, their songs filled with images of despair and violence. One lyric, "The sun is gone, but I have a light, the day is done, but I'm having fun." And then this morning, his body found at home, another casualty of success. Here's ABC's Tom Foreman.
It was that day that the music world was struck by tragedy. At the time, it was believed to be suicide, but it's still up to debate this day. With the passing of one of the best musicians to live, grunge would eventually fade into history. With the passing of the genre and its iconic artist, a new genre would be forced into center stage. That music would be shown to the world in international fashion, as Green Day's first platinum album would be released that same year. To say that the Dookie album was a passing of the torch from one musical legend to another would be an understatement. Nirvana and other grunge groups paved the way for a new sound to emerge from the American music scene. A bleeding guitar sound, a loud presence, and a depressing source material would make its way to the top charts time and time again. And when that torch was suddenly dropped, someone would have to honor the legacy. From the dark basement of grunge emerged a new, energetic, vibrant sound that would take the world by storm. The era of punk rock had officially begun and made its way onto the scene in dramatic fashion with one simple question. That question would reside from lead singer Billie Joe Armstrong, who would famously say, "Do you have the time to listen to me whine?" The rest is history. With the torch in hand, Green Day's new album wouldn't just become popular, it was a sensation. 10 million copies sold in the US, 20 million sold worldwide. The sound of punk rock wasn't just in garages in Southern California anymore, it was everywhere. You, your neighbor's dog, and your neighbor's dog's dog were all listening to this album if you were around in the summer of 1994. Multiple songs off the album dominated the top charts. Longview, Basket Case, and Welcome to Paradise all broke into the top 100 in 1994 and would continue to break in throughout the 90s.
Can you believe that he's right there?
I can't believe she's right there.
Yes, you can.
One of the album's biggest supporters, Billie Eilish, would say in an interview with Rolling Stone that her favorite Green Day song was in this album. Not only that, but she would dress up as Billie Joe Armstrong as a kid, and when she got to meet him in person, she would go on to say, "I can't believe I'm in the room with the guy who was my wallpaper." You can hear the thematic parallels in Eilish's music and Dookie as they focus on boredom, self-doubt, and a little punk edge to their sound. This album was everything to many people like Eilish, and it would only be the beginning of where Green Day was going. They weren't just going to stop there. They weren't going to fizzle out like many did before them. But how the hell were they going to do that?
Green Day Stadium. The mere mention of its name conjures up images of sweat-covered mosh pits, vomit-soaked stands, and very worried parents. But to three ragtag musicians from the Bay Area, it is simply known as home. Like salmon swimming upriver to spawn, the faithful come out in droves.
Where else would you rather be than right here, right now? Yeah!
First number, Trey counts us in, right? I want Billy, I want Mike, I want you on your march, damn it. Just like we did it all week long.
Punk rock is a rough and at times cruel music. It is not nice. In punk rock, nice guys finish last.
Fast forward to October 14th, 1997, the fifth studio album, Nimrod, would release to massive success. You may have noticed we skipped a few years there. That's just how this video is going to go. If I wanted to discuss every single Green Day album and its significance, we'd be here for a long time. So, besides that leads me to my next question. Why was Nimrod so significant compared to the other albums? I mean, sure, we could talk about its great sales, its peak in the top 10 in 1997, or its certification of double platinum, but instead, I'm just going to focus on a song. Just one simple song that I believe transcended Green Day from the punk rock genre to becoming something greater. One song that started the experimental standard of Green Day's music and would ultimately lead to their entire reputation changing among the music community. One song that I can guarantee some of you didn't even know was by Green Day. I'm, of course, talking about the one and only Good Riddance. So let me just tell you a little story real quick. Sit down, get comfortable, and remember to never break a songwriter's heart, because this is a great example of why I just said that. Once there was a boy, let's say his name was Billy, who loved a girl very much named Amanda. One day, Amanda decided to move to Ecuador, breaking poor Billy's heart. In response to the heartbreak, Billy would sit down and write a song he called Good Riddance to get his anger out. Billy was scared to show his song to the world, though, and kept it locked away for quite a while. Then, when Billy was hanging out, recording some music for his next album with his band, he figured, why not give it a try? He recorded his song, added Time of Your Life to the end, and then he showed it to his music producer. He loved it, but thought something was missing. He sent Billy and his band away to play foosball in the other room while he meticulously worked in his studio for decades. When Billy and his band returned, strings were added to his beautiful song, the first time they would ever use strings in their music. Later that year, Amanda would see that song about her would go on to individually sell over 5 million copies and peak at number 11 on the US Billboard. So, moral of the story, don't fuck with songwriters, kids. Good Riddance was more than just a heartbreak song, though. This was the start of a formula that Green Day would pioneer. New, experimental music blooming from just pure emotion and creation. From here on out, Green Day was never quite the same. Some say for better, some say for worse. If you want my opinion, Green Day was just warming up. Warming up for what, you ask? To make punk rock music? No. To make more songs like Good Riddance? Wrong again. To go on to make one of the best albums ever conceived in the form of a Queen-esque rock opera discussing the Iraq War, media polarization, and the president destroying the world. No, what? Holy shit. Wait. That can't be it. Wait, are you serious? To be completely honest here, this album is the entire reason why I decided to make this video. There is just something about it that can't be conveyed in words. Every single lyric has thought behind it, every power chord has a message trying to escape the music, and everything was meticulously crafted to create one of the best albums I have ever heard in my life. That isn't just my opinion either. This album would transcend the modern music sound of 90s punk rock, conveying a new message to the same generation it originally started with, who was experiencing a political crisis in America. To do this album proper justice and understand why it succeeded so much, we are going to need to establish 3 things. Where Green Day was before the album was released, where the US was as a nation before the album was released, and a breakdown of the story the rock opera tells in the album, which was released. So sit down and buckle up. This is it right here. The year is 2002, specifically nearing the end of the year when Green Day had just played on tour with Blink-182. Green Day's previous album, Warning, would be a smash among critics, but sell poorly with their changing US audience. Things weren't so pretty on the inside, too. The band was falling apart, and so was Billy. He felt insecure as he would reflect in a later interview, "I was fascinated and horrified as his reckless lifestyle and failing marriage took a toll on his well-being." He would call Mike Dirnt, the bassist of the group, and ask him, "Do you want to do the band anymore?" The answer to that question was never revealed. According to Dirnt, they were lost and needed to shift directions as a band. Things, however, were just going to get a whole lot worse. The month is November, and after completing over 20 songs for their next album, Cigarettes and Valentines, a songwriter's worst nightmare came true. The master tracks of the album were stolen. It would take over a decade for the tracks to be found again, and at this point, there was a crossroads that Green Day would have to embark on. Do they keep the experimental ideas of Cigarettes and Valentines and try to re-record the album? Do they go back to their punk roots and try and capture that early 90s magic? Or should the group decide to go their separate ways, for better or for worse? As a last-ditch effort to recapture that spark the group once had, Billy gave the band members an assignment. Each member of the group would record a 30-second song discussing their thoughts, struggles, and dreams for that exact moment they were at in their lives. They performed for each other and found some common motifs among the group. So, what were those motifs exactly?
CBS News headquarters in New York, here is Dan Rather.
It was just over 90 minutes beyond President Bush's deadline for Saddam Hussein to leave Iraq that U.S. warships and planes, there were F-117 stealth bombers involved, launched the opening salvo of Operation Iraqi Freedom.
To say that the Iraq War was controversial and polarizing wouldn't even come close to the magnitude of the situation. Political beliefs in the U.S. had shifted towards two sides, those for peace and those for war. After the events of 9/11, the country would have to respond somehow. As George Bush was sworn into office, he also swore into a war that would outlive his presidency. The American people were stuck in a great divide, one that would never mend back together. The media capitalized on this turmoil in stereotypical fashion. Headlines, arguments, and dramatic tellings of the war would flood every news outlet in America. To this 90s generation, newly stimulating the workforce, there was no escape. Everyone had an opinion, and everyone thought the other was wrong. Sounds a lot like today, huh? The motifs of love versus hate, peace versus war, and truth versus deception were all sticking out of the cataclysmic storm of American society. This storm is what would push Green Day's sails, literally and figuratively. With those common motifs discovered by each band member, they decided to combine them into one character. In this character resided the entire generation of the 90s' despair, conflict, and political motivation during the ongoing Iraq War. But they didn't want this to just be any old normal character. This character was going to be an anti-hero. A character that lacked heroic attributes and instead would be riddled with flaws like bullet holes in a tank. This character would bleed these motifs from those flaws. From this character, an idea stemmed. A story began to write itself, and the band would write tirelessly for 10 months. As Billy would later on reflect upon these writing sessions, for the first time, we separated from our past, from how we were supposed to behave as Green Day. For the first time, we fully accepted the fact that we are rock stars. And after tirelessly working on the album, September 21st, 2004 would arrive. And just 10 days after 9/11's 3-year anniversary, the world will be introduced to the American antihero and his story. So, what was this flawed character's name?
I'm the son of raging love, the Jesus of suburbia, the Bible love, none of the above, only steady tired of. Started popping Ritalin, now I never died for myself.
The son of rage and love and living on a diet of soda and cocaine, Jesus of Suburbia lives in a world where everyone cares about themselves. So, therefore, he doesn't care either. But under this mask, he cries for help. A world where everyone isn't raised by hypocrites. A world where everyone is free from media turmoil and propaganda. His life has become mundane and routine, and he yearns for a new life. So, he decides to leave his home for something new out there, and feels no shame for leaving everything he has behind. As he says in the song, "To live and not to breathe is to die in tragedy." Holiday is where we are going next in Jesus' story. The war that President Bush has caused is feared to be the start of World War III and the beginning of the end of the world. It is belted by Jesus as he discusses the president tearing everything to the ground, as he is always going to be on holiday in this hellscape. This is the most direct political song on the album, which makes sense given the subject matter. It's short-lived though, because the party is about to end.
I walk a lonely road, the only one that I have ever known. Don't know where it goes, but it's home to me and I walk.
After the party is over and much of the world destroyed, Jesus makes his way to the city, specifically to walk the boulevard of broken dreams. Loneliness, pain, and darkness creep their way into his mind as he says, "I'm walking down the line that divides me somewhere in my mind." This is where Jesus begins to morph into a new character we haven't seen yet. Someone who is the opposite of himself, not lost in their own despair and tragedy. The city is going to be a safeguard and a start of something new for him. This unfortunately wouldn't turn out to be true. The hangover starts in Are We the Waiting as the neon lights of the city blind Jesus. He doesn't fit in here and has nothing left. Is this what he was waiting for this whole time? And as he walks through the streets, he begins to transform. He's in a new place where nobody knows him and he can be anybody he wants to be. So who will he choose as his new persona?
Jimmy's coming down across the alleyway, up on the boulevard like a zip gun on parade. Lights on the silhouette, he's just a buttonette, coming at you on the count of 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4.
So, St. Jimmy would be that character. He's the villain of the opera, he's the patron saint of denial, and he suppresses all love in himself to turn to rage that has been slowly brewing since the beginning. There is no more son of rage and love. The only thing that is left is rebellion and anger, and St. Jimmy is everything that encapsulates that. To be completely honest, like just stepping out of the story here for a second, this is my favorite song off of the entire album. And not just that, it is one of my favorite villain songs ever. Because, as you saw from that footage earlier, this was a musical. In fact, it was on Broadway as the American Idiot Broadway show. Absolutely phenomenal. Billy Joe actually played in the musical. He starred as St. Jimmy and just absolutely kills it. I don't know how a rock star trans over to Broadway so well, but it is phenomenal. It is a fantastic song and a fantastic time. It's a real shame, though, that because of this is where the album starts to take a turn for the worst, and Jesus, or I guess St. Jimmy at this point, is starting to really face the consequences. Give Me Novocaine is next as St. Jimmy fully takes over Jesus of Suburbia's body. He has lost all parts of himself and has given full control to the alter ego of St. Jimmy. One of the more mellow songs on the album, this is the first glimpse at the somber ending this album will have. You'll see what I mean by that a bit later. The other, non-story meaning of the song is pretty simple. It's about feeling super shitty and not really wanting to feel shitty. All you want to do is numb yourself and make the pain go away. Novocaine isn't just an intoxicating drug. Novocaine is a painkiller. The song has a pulling feeling as the story takes a different turn. St. Jimmy meets somebody new, the girl of his dreams. This is where the love interest comes into play. So, who will be the love interest of this wonderful opera of ours?
She's a rebel, she's a saint, she's the salt of the earth and she's dangerous. She's a rebel, vigilante, missing link on the brink of destruction. From Chicago to Toronto, she's the one that they call, what's her name?
She's a Rebel is the intro song for the love interest What's Her Name in the story. Yes, you heard that right, her name's What's Her Name. You'll find out why later on. The song would inspire the album's cover art. She's holding on my heart like a hand grenade. She's everything that Jesus wants. She sings the revolution, the dawning of our lives, he says. She was the life he has always wanted. Many believe the song to be about America as well, specifically diving back to its past about its foundation as a nation. Oh, that rhymed. Speaking of which, go listen to Hamilton for more on that if you want. No. It's my script. Fuck off. Go somewhere else. This is about American Idiot, not about Hamilton. Seriously, we are not... Deep breath. Sorry. Where were we? The love song in the musical. Extraordinary Girl is then talking more about Jesus and What's Her Name's relationship. It's about compromise and learning that love is much more of what you put into it than what you take. Jesus is out of the falling in love phase that was defined earlier in She's a Rebel, and more into the calm phase of self-reflection. However, even though Jesus believes in their undying love, What's Her Name does not. This song introduces why it is destined to fall apart from the very beginning. Jesus rebelled for attention and for his own significance. That's where St. Jimmy came from. What's Her Name, however, rebelled for the sake of being a true rebel, and love will not get in her way of that. What's Her Name fell in love with St. Jimmy, but not with Jesus of Suburbia. Because of this, Jesus' life comes crashing down once again. Letter Bomb is the call for revolution in the album. What's Her Name makes fun of Jesus, saying, "Nobody likes you, everyone left you," at the beginning of the song, as the lie of St. Jimmy is uncovered. Jesus has failed to be a rebel, and the time he spent in the city was completely wasted. The internal war in his mind leads him to lose everything in his life, including What's Her Name. His fake personality could only go so far, and as the song says, it's not over until you're underground. It's time to go home. One of the longer songs on the album, Homecoming, thus tells the story of Jesus' return to suburbia. He talks to himself over and over, reflecting on a postcard from a friend living the life he wished he had, and he decides to take a sober look into how he can't change the world around him. But no matter what, Jesus realizes that home is safety and will always be there for you. I wish that the album would have ended here, but unfortunately there's one person that he'll never truly forget.
Thought I ran into you down on the street.
What's Her Name thus concludes the album and the story that we've all been on together. In this song, to conclude it, Jesus reflects on his life before coming back home. He misses the girl of his dreams, and he made a point to burn all the photographs, as he says in the song. It's a breakup song to conclude the rock opera, and it is quite sobering. Throughout everything Jesus has experienced from the very beginning, he won't be able to completely forget her. He will forget her face, her name, and the memory of them together, but he will never forget the memory of her, no matter what. What's Her Name now holds a new meaning, as he can't remember the girl he fell in love with, and it makes us wonder as an audience, did she ever really exist at all? Unfortunately, a brief synopsis just won't do this album justice. I would highly recommend listening to the entire album in order for yourself and reading a breakdown if you are interested. In fact, an even better route is watching the musical American Idiot. It's absolutely fantastic and well worth your time. I would most likely guess that many of you associate Green Day with this album. That will tell you enough about what it meant to the success and legacy that Green Day would leave. While this album clearly represents the times it was made for, Billy hoped that it would remain timeless and become more an overarching statement on confusion. In today's day and age, where it feels like we are more divided than ever, maybe this album can once again serve as something that can bring us all together again, like it did almost 20 years ago. Before we wrap up though, some of you may have noticed that I skipped one song in particular off of the American Idiot album, mostly due to its lack of connection in the story, but also because of its personal meaning that just couldn't be glossed over. When Billy was just 10, his father passed away from cancer. A major role model in his life, his father would be what got him into music in the first place, having a background as a jazz drummer. Just 2 years before his passing, his father would get him into piano lessons, which would start Billy's musical journey. When he found out the news that his father had passed away, he locked himself in his room, refusing to leave. And when his mother came to check on him, knocking on his door, Billy would fight back tears and tell her just one thing.
Summer has come and passed. The innocent can never last. Wake me up when September ends.
20 years later, Billy would go on to record the song that to this day he still will barely perform for a live audience. A song of pain, fear, and reflection that would stay in the hearts of many of his fans to this day. The beauty in this song that stems from a usual rough-edged punk rock group is truly something that everyone should hear. To know that someone can struggle through so much and yet create something so beautiful is so inspiring to me. I hope that hearing what Billy has gone through can inspire some of you out there as well. There will always be beauty in this world, no matter the pain and struggles we face. Sometimes in this scary world, we just need a song like this one to break the silence.
What I lost. Wake me up when September ends.
I would like to thank you all so much for watching this video. The amount of research and time spent on this was just ridiculous, and I would like to thank all of my close friends and family for their support. This video essay was a doozy and certainly got depressing at times. I'm so glad that I had all of your support getting me through it. If there is anything that I would like to leave you with today, it's to think about music the next time you are facing a struggle. The music of Green Day brought an entire generation together, and I hope that it will happen again. Rumors say they're working on another album set to debut sometime in 2023. If they can create American Idiot 10 years after their debut album, who knows what else they have in the backlogs. Thank you so much for joining me on this wild ride. I hope at the very least you learned something from it. So, with that, good riddance, and go have the time of your life. Just, no matter what, don't be an American idiot.
Well, we've known Weezer forever.
Sure.
So, and then Fall Out Boy, they're our children. So it's nice to hang out with your kids and yeah.
But you've moved into this place now where there are a raft of new young artists who are coming out who talk all the time about you as about being a huge inspiration on them. Billie Eilish said that you used to be the wallpaper on her cell phone. Like, how does it feel now? Like, Trey, how does it feel to be these elder statesmen of rock and these bands just talking about you with such influence?
Well, we're basically an older, less mature Green Day. And yeah, we've thrown our seed all around the world, so there's gonna be kids.